What's up, everybody? We are back with a solo episode here, and we are going to be talking about what everybody's calling the right-wing civil war here. Okay, so what you've got is the Republican Party seems to have been split into two, and it's not even really cleanly the Republican Party. As you know, we talk a lot about the dynamics of the right wing here in the United States on this show. So it's a civil war really on the right wing because it includes some libertarians too, and we're going to talk about that. So the two sides, as I see them here, I call one like the neocon side, the old guard side, old school conservatives. Okay, these are Ben Shapiro's, Sean Hannity's, Mark Levin's, pretty much anyone you see on Fox News. Laura Ingraham. Okay. Steven Crowder could be another one. Pardon me. These people are their side is defined by number one, just because this is a hot topic right now. They're very pro-Israel. Okay, they're pro-interventionist. So these are a lot of Republicans that were at least initially for the funding of Ukraine and the Ukraine-Russia war. Again, old guard conservatives. These are people that have been big voices in the mainstream media for a really long time. But you guys know the stereotype. This is someone. If Bill O'Reilly was still relevant, I'd include Bill O'Reilly in this camp. But then you've got the other side, and this is like what people are calling the new right. This is the side that I think the Western conservatives identify more with. These are the Tucker Carlsons, okay? The Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, Dave Smith, and some people want to call us the alt-right, the non-interventionist right. They're defined really by being very pro-Christian, more libertarian leanings, kind of that's where the non-interventionism comes from, but also economically more libertarian, as well as being focused on the national, more libertarian focus of the national debt. A lot of times these people are kind of smeared as conspiracy theorists or just podcasters. That's a lot of that's how I define these two sides of the Civil War. And there are a few issues that have been really big. And the top one would be foreign policy, especially when it comes to Israel. Okay. It has divided the right like no other issue. Okay. And Donald Trump was smart to take this issue off the table as quickly as he could. He's done his best to end the war there. There are still some strikes happening, but at a very small level. The war is effectively over. Trump got all the hostages back that were taken by Hamas. So Trump, I think, has done a really good job on the Israel topic, even though the side I identify more with, the non-interventionist Tucker Carlson side, for some reason doesn't really want to give him credit. These people like Dave Smith are saying that the peace isn't going to hold, that it's no good. This is just a pause in the fighting, and maybe all that's true. But it's still like way better than what we would have got out of a Kamala Harris administration or some kind of Joe Biden administration. The steps that are being taken right now are the first steps towards peace, no matter how pessimistic you are about the whole Israel topic. That's been the number one wedge issue in this right-wing civil war, followed up by, again, foreign policy, the war in Ukraine. Guys like Ben Shapiro were heavy into Ukraine, especially in the beginning, on us sending money to make sure we could fight Russia. It's like a very, 80s foreign policy. We have to oppose Russia at all turns. We care for some reason who rules Kiev, which is kind of insane. We're willing to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to determine which corrupt regime is going to rule there. But, whatever. That's one of the big topics of this civil war. The neocon side tends to be a lot more for Trump's tariffs. Remember, the non-interventionist side is really defined by more libertarian economics. So you'll find people like Dave Smith and Candace Owens speaking out against the tariffs. Marjorie Taylor Greene's another one that falls into this camp. And I think we've talked enough about this show on the tariff front. So I don't want to get into the whole tariff thing again, but I'm not as skeptical of the tariffs as others. I think that free trade has done a lot of damage to this country. I think that by taking a free trade approach, if you extrapolate across a long timeline, a free trade globalist approach is going to result in an equilibrium in the world, all else being equal. And if you're an American, equilibrium is not a good thing, because that means that our standard of living is going to go down. People in other countries' standard of living is going to go up. And that kind of makes sense if you are sending, billions of dollars overseas to buy something people are making in China. China is going to get richer. The United States is going to get poorer. And I understand there's a lot of people who feel differently. And there are economists that will say, no, in a scenario like that, we'll both get richer. But we haven't seen that. When we've had trade deficits for many, many, many years, and our country has gotten poorer, not richer. And I understand it's complicated. And again, I don't want to litigate that whole thing right now. But the neocons, more pro-tariff, okay, the Tucker Carlson non-interventionist camp, some people call it the new right. I think it aligns better with the Western conservatives. They are more anti-tariff, okay? And then we've got some kind of weird, I call these like the battlefields, what's being fought over. One of the weird ones is whose side Charlie Kirk was on. There's been all sorts of talk online about, especially from Candace Owens, about whether he was turning on Israel or not. She'd been calling on all sorts of Charlie Kirk allies and friends to release the text messages from before he died about his position on Israel. Dave Smith released some. Candace Owens had released some. He went on Charlie Kirk had gone on Patrick Bet David before being killed. And there he seemed to soften his stance on Israel. And it seems like he was starting to go that way, that he felt that the Israeli government was doing a really poor job at communicating why they had to carry out the war in Gaza the way they were doing. And he wasn't happy with being taken along for that ride. So even though there's tons of pro-Israel stuff from Charlie Kirk, and it seemed like for most of his life he would have fell in the neocon side, there was evidence that he was kind of transitioning more to a position similar to Tucker Carlson's. And Tucker Carlson's openly talked about that at Turning Point events, Charlie Kirk gave him full license to talk about Israel in any way he desired, even though it was costing Charlie Kirk donors. So that kind of gives you an idea of Charlie Kirk's mindset in the final days of his life and how he felt about this conflict. But it's been so that's kind of a weird battlefield, right? I mean, Charlie Kirk is seen as a right-wing martyr. People are trying to project their views onto him because so much attention was given to Charlie Kirk's record and because he had such a body of work online that after he was killed, a lot of attention was put on those clips, and people, other commentators are trying to project their views onto him. And I don't think it's ill-intentioned. I don't think that's just to capitalize on the attention he had gotten, from being the highest profile assassination in decades. I think it's fair for people to debate how Charlie felt, and that it's not for attention. But it is kind of weird, right? For everybody to be claiming Charlie was on their side. He can't have been on everyone's side. These two sides of this right-wing conflict are very distinct. But that's a weird one that I thought was worth mentioning here. What else we got? The conspiracy. I mean, this kind of plays into the conspiracies with Erica Kirk too. There are all sorts of conspiracies out there that she's an Israeli honeypot and that she was set up with Charlie Kirk because she was a beauty pageant winner and won a Donald Trump's contest before she met Charlie. All this crazy stuff, right? Candace Owens gets into this a little bit. I'm, going to let her take off of that. I don't want to get into the Erica Kirk stuff much because I think it's kind of ridiculous. And I get that she was doing a lot of high profile events right after his death. But everybody's got their own thing, man. Everybody grieves differently. Maybe she felt a sense of purpose after Charlie was killed. I don't know. I'm not going to read too much into that one because honestly, I don't think that Erica Kirk conspiracies matter that much to this really big issue. But another big one is the national debt. The Tucker Carlson side sees and I would put myself squarely in this camp, see the national debt as a robbery from the future generations. I think we're $37 trillion in debt right now. And the national debt is like the number one issue. That's what we should be focusing on. That is what the Tucker Carlson side of this civil war really wants to laser focus. The Doge, how much government can we cut? How much debt can we start to pay off? Stop printing money. Prices are out of control. That should be our number one focus. It's the economy, stupid, right? The Neocons have a lot less laser of a focus. They're more concerned about foreign policy. They don't mind printing money. They're fine with these big omnibus spending bills. That's the old guard, man. That's how Republicans always operated. They're the biggest budget hawks ever until they're in power. The new right, the other side, the Western conservatives don't see it that way. And for myself included, right after the election, when Donald Trump won the White House again, Republicans had the Senate, the House, and had appointed more justices on the Supreme Court, I said, hey, now's our chance. Let's not pass any spending bills that add to the deficit. We can draw a hard line right here, lead by example, okay? And the neocons just blew us out here because Democrats want to keep spending. And when the right's divided and half of the right also wants to keep spending, they can join up with the Democrats and pass any spending bill they want. Completely blow our budget out of the water, add to the deficit. Donald Trump's fine with it because he's not a budget hawk. It's my biggest criticism of him is he continues to run up our national debt because he doesn't want to be an unpopular president. Okay. Presidents that enforce austerity are not popular people. You can look at all sorts of other countries. Javier Milei's a little bit of a separate phenomenon there. But presidents just don't want to be the guy to bring austerity to the country because austerity is painful. But the Tucker Carlson non-interventionist right understands the pain is coming. $37 trillion in debt. The bill's going to come due. Let's take care of it now. It's never going to get any easier to start paying off our debt than it is right now. That should be our number one focus. But again, the neocon right, more interested in, what's going on in the Middle East and what corrupt regime controls Kiev. So and again, it all kind of goes back to the foreign policy with the neocons. That's their number. They were the pro-Iraq war people. They were the pro-Syria war people. They were fine with bombing Yemen. They were pro all of these wars. Okay, they've never seen a war they didn't like, and that's really what divides the right now. So that's a big one. And then so finally, this is and here I think is the biggest part of this civil war. Okay, this is all over who inherits MAGA. Okay, Donald Trump, I'm sorry, is not going to run for a third term. I don't care what Steve Bannon says. Donald Trump is not going to be president of the United States after the 2028 election. So, if things go well, J.D. Vance is the clear shoo-in, okay? If things don't go well, it's up in the air. And that's what this whole fight is over. Who inherits MAGA? Are we going to, after Donald Trump's gone, are we going to have a right wing led by Ben Shapiro, whose first priority is Israel and the American empire, the rest of the world, blowing our budgets out of control? Or is it going to be the alternative right? Republicans who are concerned about the budget even when they're in power, who don't want to intervene in these foreign conflicts, who are pro-Christian. Okay, that it's a fight for kind of the heart and soul of MAGA. Okay, the Republican base, because remember, Donald Trump's non-ideological, so he's not leaving behind a framework for a successor. Okay, he's a people person. He picked J.D. Vance to be his successor, and it's not completely clear which camp J.D. Vance falls into here, because before the election, I would have said he's on the more Western conservative side. Okay, he is obviously pro-Christian. He seems to be non-interventionist, seems to have a more libertarian take on the economy. But as vice president, he's not speaking out in the areas where the neocons are winning. And maybe that's just because he wants to stay on Donald Trump's good side. I don't know. We'll see, because he's definitely going to run in the 2028 election. But it's all, I can't read J.D. Vance's mind. I don't know. You can find clips where he's, taking either side of some of these issues. I mean, just to give you an example, he was a never Trumper in 2016. Okay. Obviously he feels differently now. So he's developed a lot over his young political career. It's not clear to me if J.D. Vance is the heir to MAGA, which camp he's going to fall into, because this fight is not going to end. Okay. We are going to have this fight through 2028, whichever camp becomes victorious here and gets the nomination for the Republican Party, and let's just say for argument's sake here goes on to win, you still are going to have congressmen that are pro-war, who are pro-big spending bills. Okay, just winning the presidency is not enough. This is a fight for the entire heart and soul of the Republican Party and the MAGA base, which is very active. And again, the die-hard Trump fans don't fall into a lot of them don't fall into one of these two categories, because they're pro-Trump. Okay, they don't have a coherent ideology like Tucker Carlson does, or even like Ben Shapiro does. Even though I disagree with Ben Shapiro on a lot of things, he seems to have a coherent ideology that he can at least attempt to defend, even if that ideology is we should be taking care of our allies as our first priority, not our grandkids. Okay. Again, I think that's a wrong take, but at least he, has some sort of ideology there. Same with Sean Hannity, same with Mark Levin, same with Steven Crowder. And then the other note I have here for us is that what's made this all different and really all possible. The new right killed the mainstream media with Donald Trump. Okay. Donald Trump kind of struck the first blow, took him down a few pegs, but it was the podcasts and these alternative right-wing people. It was Tucker Carlson after he was fired from Fox, Joe Rogan, Dave Smith. Those are the people that killed mainstream media. I'm even going to throw Ben Shapiro in there, okay, in the Daily Wire. Steven Crowder too fits the bill, even though they're on the other side. And but those podcasts, okay, are where these ideological battles are being fought now. Dave Smith just went on trigonometry. Konstantin Kassin, even though he's British, falls in the neocon category. Okay, he's on the side of the right that's the more interventionist, more establishment. But these debates are being had on podcasts. They're not being had on CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News. I know we say all the time on this show that those platforms are dead. Cable news is completely irrelevant. But what I want to point out is that the new town hall is not, or the new public square, okay, is not some debate happening in New York Times. It's not the Wall Street Journal editorial page. It's not Fox News. It's on these podcasts, and they're being live streamed everywhere. They get tens of millions of views. Nick Fuentes was just on Tucker Carlson. That was absolutely huge. I already mentioned Dave Smith went on trigonometry. These debates are being had on these podcasts. That is the new battlefield, okay, for this civil war here. And then you've got, some big events where it's taking place. You've got turning point events where this battle's being had. I already mentioned that, Charlie Kirk wasn't clear what camp he was falling into. So turning point is up in the air. The Heritage Foundation, a report just came out. They are directing their people to watch Tucker Carlson monologues and kind of move from that neocon right over to this alternative right, which is huge because the Heritage Foundation is just known for being this old school, old guard, establishment, right-wing think tank. And it seems like they're turning around. They see the tides turning in the battle. They want to go for this more Western conservative route. It's really, again, it's not, I don't expect there to be these big debates at CPAC. Maybe they schedule something. These in-person debates are really cool up on a stage like that with two ideological juggernauts. I'd love to see Ben Shapiro take on Tucker Carlson. It'd be awesome. But I don't think we're going to see stuff like that. Not even I know at a Turning Point event, Megyn Kelly interviewed Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson on the same day, but they didn't share a stage together. Like, that's not really what we're getting here, which I hope we get to, because that kind of stuff would be awesome and it'd be blockbuster. But we're seeing it more on these pre-recorded podcasts. That seems to be the space where these intellectual battles are happening. So now that we've kind of talked about, what the two sides are, what these battles are being defined by, what our issues are, what we're fighting for, who is winning. And I'm going to throw the caveat here right in front that I threw up there earlier. If the Trump administration does a really good job and J.D. Vance is the shoo-in nominee and wins in 2028, this entire question is going to come down to two things. One, where does J.D. Vance fall? And two, can he get Congress behind him? Okay. Set that aside for a second. Let's say J.D. Vance is not the nominee and we get two, let's say, dual front runners in 2028. One clearly falling in the neocon camp, one clearly falling in the Western conservative camp. Who is winning? Who's got the leg up as of right now? Let's go through it. Tucker Carlson's camp, okay, controls most of the popular media right now. That includes, Joe Rogan, includes Part of the Problem, most of the comedians. All these guys fall on the new right side, the more Elon Musk, okay, another great example. All fall in this new right camp. They control the narrative. They're pushing on social media. That's one of the main reasons that the war in Israel became so unpopular, is because so many of these online personalities were speaking out against it, and they were gaining a lot of traction. A lot of the Trump's tariffs are unpopular for the same reason, because remember, these folks are really against those tariffs, and you could continue. Doge was really popular. I think that was for other reasons, but it helped that people like Joe Rogan and Elon Musk obviously were really pro-Doge. So these parts of the Trump administration's agenda that line up with this new right, they do really well in online in the social media and media space. And that's because that camp, that side of this civil war dominates the media, dominates the narrative. Okay. That's a solid notch in their favor. Okay. Now it's the neocons side. Okay. The neocons have way more control over the deep state, way more control over foreign policy, federal bureaucracy. That's the Department of State, the Department of War, the Department of Treasury. All the the neocons specialize in bureaucracy control. Okay. The left, they're not better than the left. And they do share a lot of the traits with the left. Some people would argue they're one and the same. I think we have to draw a distinction, but they clearly are winning the deep state battle. You could see when there is a prolonged issue, something like the Ukraine war, Donald Trump starts off on the new right side, and his administration just slowly drags him towards the neocons. That's his advisors. That's the military. That's the economists. That's all these people that have his ear that he's, dictating orders to, telling them they can't do it. They can't end the war in Ukraine because of this many million reasons. When really it's just because ideologically they want the war to continue. They have, again, the 1980s foreign policy where they see Russia as Satan himself. So the neocons solidly control the federal bureaucracy in terms of the right wing. Budget, we talked about that too. Donald Trump falls into that old guard establishment. When Republicans are in charge, they don't give a shit about the budget. Republicans are only budget hawks when they're in the minority. Donald Trump falls clearly into that side. They have won that battle completely. So that's another notch in the neocon side. But back to the Western conservatives. Culture, highly leaning towards the Tucker Carlson side, okay? Young people especially, okay? They're sick and tired of wages being stagnant, sick and tired of being told that, free trade is the greatest thing and globalism is what we should all aspire to. They're sick of not being able to buy a house, not being able to get married, not being able to have kids. All that cultural side, okay, goes towards the non-interventionist, okay? A perfect example, Ben Shapiro just was online. I wish I had the clip queued up, but he just was being interviewed and told somebody that, young people just might have to live with the idea that they can't afford a house where they grew up. That is complete bullshit. Our country has completely failed if people cannot purchase houses in the neighborhood they grew up in. Okay, and I understand there are a few exceptions to that in the richest, zip codes of our country. But what we're talking about is the average person, okay? The average 24-year-old, 25-year-old cannot buy a house where they grew up, okay? No matter what county they grew up in. That is a complete failure of our system and has to change. Otherwise, young men are going to change it at the barrel of a gun, okay? This is not something to screw around with. But people like Ben Shapiro just want you to shut up and keep sending all your money to Israel. So that's the Ben Shapiro side has completely lost the cultural narrative. And I will say too, there's something to be said for the left here, because we just saw the election of Mamdani in New York City. We saw some woman in Seattle, communist, got elected there. If we don't make the free market case, okay, this new right, if we don't make the case that, the free market is the solution to the housing crisis, which it is, we don't make the case that the government shouldn't be sending billions to other countries. We don't make, the economic case for sound money, all these things against the Federal Reserve, you name it, that we've all talked about on the show a ton of times. The new right has to make the case, has to do a better job, okay, making the case for free market reforms and opposing socialism. Because young people, when they can't afford a house, can't afford a family, can't afford all these things, they're going to make a choice. They're either going to turn right towards free market economics, or they're going to turn left towards socialism. And we're seeing that right now. With the election of Donald Trump, that was the turn right. He was talking a lot about this free market stuff, even though I would argue he hasn't implemented a lot of it. He at least campaigned on it, talked about it, okay? He won that battle. The elections we just saw, that was the left turn. That was young people in New York. The socialist message resonated with them. Same thing in Seattle. Virginia, Democrats won. A Democrat won after threatening to kill the Republican and his kids which is a whole other frightening issue. But if organizations like the Mises Institute, like the Cato Institute, like, the Western conservatives as a whole, if we do not make the case for free market economics better than we are, because we are clearly not doing a good enough job, the result of all this is going to be socialism. And you can kind of see why young people are gravitating towards leaders that put their hand up, leftists, and just say, hey, you can't afford shit. How about I just make everything free? You can see why that would resonate with people who say, well, the rich people are, they've got the economy rigged for them. They're stealing all the government contracts. They're robbing me blind. Maybe I should get in on this and get while the getting's good before everything collapses. You can see where a rational person would think that. We have to make the case that no, this system actually can be saved, and it's the government's fault. Okay, it's the economic interventionists, okay, that have ruined our economy, ruined our systems, and it's the free market that can solve it. That's a sustainable solution, not this socialist, I'm getting mine while the getting's good mentality. We have to make that argument better. Otherwise, it's going to be President AOC, President Mamdani. So, little self-reflection there. Deep, badly needed self-reflection after the elections we just saw. And again, so we got a couple notches on each side's belt. Okay, points in each category. The way, in summary, how it seems like it's shaken out to me is that the neocons are winning in the short term. They're getting their spending bills. They get to keep blowing up the budgets. They get to keep insider trading, no term limits. They're still stealing all of our money like the criminals they are. But long term, okay, that it seems like the young people are coming around to the new right-wing views. It seems like the culture really shifting towards the new right wing, young people, all that stuff. Okay. I think the long game right now is going to be won by Tucker Carlson's side. I think the old guard's on its way out, even though they're still raping and pillaging the federal budget for all that it's got. The end is near for them. And I think it's going to be after 2028. Okay. The neocons will continue to win up until then. I think after 2028, they lose. They're losing the long game. But it's a lot of years between 2028 and now. A lot could happen. The only other thing I have here is, that neither side really has the claim to being purely MAGA. Again, that's because MAGA is not an ideology. But both sides have opposed Trump on certain issues. We covered those. I think we could tone this whole Civil War thing down and really just focus on defeating the left again if we could neutralize our foreign policy issues. If we could come to an agreement that we're not going to fund these foreign wars, okay, to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars, making the Western conservatives happy, but also, kind of reassure the neocons that we're not going to completely withdraw from the world. We're not going to be isolationists. We could find a good balance there. We could neutralize the foreign policy issues that are the most divisive within the party and really tone this whole thing down, focus back on defeating the left. Okay. Israel has really ripped these two parts aside, the Israel issue. I think that's toning down. So maybe we've seen the worst of all this infighting on the right. And I hope that's true, because the right is much more effective when we're together fighting the left versus fighting each other. And fighting each other has to happen. We've got to work out our ideological differences. That's healthy. That's a good thing. We don't want to be like the Democrats where we have these purity tests and we just kick anybody out that doesn't toe the party line, like, blocking Bernie Sanders from getting the nomination, things like that. We don't want to become that. We want good, healthy debate, okay? But we don't want it to be self-destructive. So with Gen Z clearly on the Tucker Carlson side and the Western conservative side, I think we're looking good. Even though we're not getting exactly what we want from the Trump administration right now, I think things are still trending the right way. Hopefully the right wing can patch this up and focus on defeating the left in 2028 and in the midterms in 2026. So that's it. That's my take here on all the infighting on the right wing. So thanks for listening.